What up? Happy New Year and welcome back to the podcast. You have your two favorite people to listen to at this point. Me, everybody's favorite uncle, Uncle Don Don. Also, my other half for this conversation is my brother Qualls, aka.
Mr. Qualifier. How y'all doing?
There we
Indeed,
go.
indeed. If only they knew the hat selection journey before starting this episode.
Yeah, for both of us, even
Yeah.
though see my decision was to forego the hat and go with the hat that grew out my head.
Look, hey, ain't nothing wrong with your crown, king. Ain't nothing wrong with your crown, king. You hear me? You know? But it's funny because also in this, in the early going of this new year, I think for me it's a little bit different because of where my birthday falls. And I
True.
don't know if this is more my birthday or more just time in general. But I kind of had this epiphany of this, this kind of like acceptance of this is who I am. Like aside from how I got the year started, I just kind
Right.
of had this epiphany of like you're who you are. Like there's always room for growth. Like there's always room for you to be better in areas you want to. But for the most part, this is the foundation of who Qualls is set. More so specifically, I want to know when did you realize that you were like who you are? Like when did you kind of have that moment of this is who Donald is? Like I've accepted that whether it's my preferences, whether it's things I, like, don't like, whether it's boundaries that I know for sure are going to be around for the long haul. When do you feel like you realized who you were and that foundation was set?
I mean, that's a good question to ask, but it's also a hard question to ask because I feel like I'm still finding that out. Like I
Mhm.
have a very strong sense of self, if that's what you're asking. And I think I've had that all my life, even as a kid. I just maybe didn't have the language to articulate certain things or the experience to own certain things. But I was talking to Lawrence, shout out to my best friend one time. This wasn't recent, this was maybe like a year or two ago, but he was just like, you've always been your own person. Like you just always been confident. And I don't see it that way. I mean, I feel confident, for the most part, but the way he just like you basically just march to the beat of your own drum. So I think I knew I was always a little left to center. And I mean, this is just in like thinking about different things like perspective. Most kids grow up and want to be like one of four professions. That wasn't me. I'm just like, well, I'll figure it out. Like I just kind of always ended up forging my own path. So I mean, I think I'm still discovering who that is, but I would if I had to give it a number, 27 felt close to that. Um, Moving back to Chicago, being 30 felt closer to that, but I think everything started to fall into place for real for me 32. So when I was 32, I feel like I kind of fell into I don't know who I was, or however you phrased that question, but I think it's an ongoing process.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely an ongoing process. And I realize that I'm in the midst of it. And I think for me, it might have been a little bit different because, and I feel like I've spoke about it or spoke to it in some way, form, or fashion before, but for so long before kind of maybe the last couple of months, uh, a lot of my preferences, a lot of my boundaries, a lot about me, more than I really would like to admit, was kind of based in others' perceptions. I don't think that I came to a point where I accepted who I was. Like, I don't like this. I do like this. I'm willing to deal with this. I'm not willing to deal with that. I enjoy this. I don't enjoy that. Like being solid and confident in that to the point where it allows me to have a base that doesn't fluctuate based on who I'm around and who I'm dealing with. Like I know how to adjust and I know how to use discernment when needed, but also at the same time, like I'm steady.
I've said this in part in other conversations, but this has felt like the first year of the rest of my life. So we have this idea, this image of who we want to be in the world, what we're going to do, what life is supposed to look like. This should happen and follow this plan or whatever. Um, but that doesn't always happen, right? So I at 34 was living in a space where how I saw myself, the world and everything was actually happening.
Mm.
So like my biggest takeaway from 34 was just like now I'm pressing start in a way I haven't before. I've always had, a voice and a perspective, but like I understand how to exercise it now, so that's completely different. But also everything up until this point of like my interests and things I wanted to accomplish and things that I would like just randomly go out and do and like all these things that happened felt aspirational before, but now it was just like, damn, you painted the picture and now you brought it to life. So that was my 34 takeaway.
How exciting is that? Just that idea of like pressing start. How exciting is that for you?
Very. I can't even put that into words. And I'm not one to put excited in my vocabulary. Like if you know me, I don't really say it for real. And if I have said it, I probably didn't mean it. But so there are very few things that I truly am excited about, but it feels good. Like it feels like this is right. Now the rest of the world is in chaos and turmoil. So it's just like, well, damn, how do you feel like you can live in this light, this bubble of the path that you want to go and everything is crumbling around you? Not to be morbid, but um, I don't know. It still feels good to be insulated in that. It is exciting.
Yeah, no, that's real, and that's tough because especially like within the last couple of weeks, there has been a lot going on in the world that's just been devastating and really sad, especially when we think about like the fires in LA and everything like that. And I think in general, like even aside from world things because you have the world at large, but then you have your world, right? And like even
Mhm.
in your world, you can still have that scenario of like being in your light, but like the things around you, whether that's the people, whether that's some of the experiences or the situations that are more so closely connected to you, can still feel morbid or can still make you question whether you should kind of like stand in that like confidently because you don't want to make it seem like you're unaware. But that's interesting that you brought that up because I feel like that's a good segue into something else I want to talk about in terms of like village and community. And so I sent you the clip last week just talking about how essentially the loss of that village in that community has made us, dependent on one person or one thing to serve all purposes for us. And I'm not trying to force a connection to standing in that light, but how have you noticed your approach to village and community as you are also stepping into this light of yours that is very exciting and very much like a new beginning? There's so much on the horizon for me that I don't want to let too much get into the way of this, but also don't want to lose more than necessary along the way, if that's even how you're looking at it or thinking about it.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think village is important, community is important. As much emphasis as I put on my village and my community now, I learned it ain't got to be big.
Mm,
And, sometimes you hear village like, oh, it takes a village to do whatever. And this village is a gang of people. Hold on. We can be a small town and still get through some stuff, okay? Like it's townships out here, it's villages. They are successful, okay?
yeah.
I can do that. So I keep my village small and I now do it unapologetically. And it's not that I am looking to lose friends or people. I just need to limit their access because the light and the bubble and everything that I just said that I'm living in is worth more to me than anything. So if you are somehow endangering that space, oh yeah, my village is we about to change our zip code and get a little smaller again, and that's gonna be it. So yeah, no, village is number one for me though.
Yeah, that's real. You mentioned access, and to me, access is tricky. I feel like we differ a little bit in this department because I feel like I am way more not forgiving, but I think I am prone to have more faith and see more in people to the point where I don't have boundaries to my access in the way that I should. Whereas I feel like you've always kind of been able to have that discernment of we cool, you over here, you have this access, but not this access. Whereas it could be somebody over here, you have all this access and you hold this value and you know how to go between, these different people and the places you have them. And I feel like I'm just getting to a place where I can comfortably place people here, understand what access they should have, and move forward confidently without overthinking it, without being worried if somebody is going to be upset about how I'm going about it or why I'm going about it, whatever the case may be. So, how have you, kind of approached access? Because I know I still kind of struggle with like, for me, it's kind of like all or nothing. Like, I kind of only want people in my life that I can give all of that access to
Mhm.
because I naturally just kind of tend to give and share everything with people who I want to trust. Definitely got to learn that discernment. If I'm identify as an adult, that's required.
Nah.
But how have you approached access, and not so much that it's been easy, but how have you been able to stay strong and confident in how you navigate the access you give to people?
I will start by rolling it back and saying I'm shocked to hear that you thought that I had this figured out. That
Not figured
I was
out.
no, that I was able to put like the boundaries up. You say like you always have. I think I present that way, but that was not the case up until literally 2.5 years ago. Like I realized that I didn't have boundaries because I was access granted, right? You in front of me, you got it. Like that was it. There was no out. Everybody was in.
Access
Okay.
granted is crazy. That's top tier. Touche. Touche.
I was for the people. That sounds terrible. You know what I mean. Like my bad. I didn't have boundaries, was the point of what I was saying, okay? Um, and then I learned them by saying you were in or out, but it was only a few people who was out because that would only be if they like fucked up majorly or something, you know? But there's nuances to in and out, or to in. Everybody doesn't need the same access pass to you. So when you say you want to give the people that you have that have access to you all of that, they don't need that. They need the portion that will serve them best, right? They all of that means you would just still completely depleting yourself from my experience. If y'all watch and say something different, then live your life. I don't care. But for me, that's very much what it was. So I was like, oh, everybody that I decide that can be in still does not need to be front row. They can be here, they can be here. You have a key to the back door. You can park in the garage. You can have a driveway. Like everybody has their areas of what access now to me looks like. It is a lot smaller, but it comes with so much peace. It comes with so much peace. I limit the noise in my life as much as possible. It's probably why I don't like kids. Um, so yeah, it's important to hold on to because peace and quiet is everything now.
Yeah, no, I definitely get that. And I really do admire it, and that's why it's something I'm working on.
I do have a question though. Would you say in everything that we talked about, from a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being the most, how much of a people pleaser have you been up until this point?
uh, if I want to try to save face, I'll probably say an 8, 8.5. But then let's be honest, it's probably been a 10. Uh,
Okay.
I, and I mean, and I have no problem admitting that just because I'm not ashamed of it because I understand the origin story of why I'm like that. But sometimes I'm just so hurt for my younger self, or I feel for my younger self, I should say, because uh, you could argue that there's so much pain that could be saved from understanding the people pleasing aspect earlier, but it's kind of hard for me to say I didn't need some of those experiences for it to resonate. Why, for me in particular, like for me individually, why I need to find that balance. Yeah, and I guess back to that access piece, it's I think I've always struggled with figuring out which access serves the other person because my viewpoint of that always made that feel selfish. Like that felt wrong. It felt like I was using people if I based the access I granted them off of like what served them. And also in a weird way, like when it comes to people and interactions and relationships, I consider myself very simple in the fact that you cool, you think I'm cool, you rock with me, I rock with you. Let's rock out. Like if to me, it's always been that simple because I guess I've just always genuinely wanted to see the best in people. And
Mhm.
I've learned that that's not wrong, but that just goes back to the sermon and everything. So yeah, people pleasing has definitely something that got to get taken care of. But I don't know. Yeah, the origin story of it makes a lot of sense why it's there, and I'm pretty sure more people subscribe to it than they like to admit. But it just is what it is.
Yeah, I can't say this is necessarily true for you, but I think in some aspect, like people pleasing has this certain level of like seeing the good in people. Like you just kind of always comply or you always want to help support just because you believe that there is something there. Like some stuff people pleasing, if we're talking the origin story of stuff, is out of um what's the word I'm looking for? Like a negative thing. Yeah, you said trauma, drama, DTR,
Oh
which
well, could be drama, could be trauma
could
from
be
different levels and things. But yeah,
right,
both.
right. So the people pleasing, was coming out of Cinderella, basically, right? She was badgered by her step family, and she just, yes, I will do this. Like that's the negative side of people pleasing. She felt like she had to earn her spot,
I think a
but.
lot of people do.
Right. And the other part of people pleasing is that, you may be on the hopeful side of it. Like, oh, I'm doing this because it helps that person or this is going to benefit them in some way. And I don't know what happened to me. I just feel like life hardened me a bit. So sometimes I have even said this more times in the last month and a half than I have in my entire life. But I said sometimes I wish I was more like my mama because she is such an angel and just sees the good in people. I mean, she's got some discernment, so don't get me wrong. She's just not out here like a goofy, but she just sees the good in people and wants to help them and all of those things. And somehow she ended up with such a cynical person as a son. Like I'm the exact opposite. I'm like, oh, I could be so much nicer, but I don't assume the good in people. I assume everybody can be good, but I don't think people show that unprompted. They show their real self. That is shown immediately. But when you put them in a situation where they should be good, now I feel like they tried to be. So I look at you at face value and assume you ain't got too much more to give.
That is interesting. And that is one, a skill. So shouts out to you. I think it's a skill
Or a reason to go to therapy. Because I
which you
have.
are in, but I think it's a skill, and I think something that you're really good at is you're just really good at gauging and reading people. Like I've seen you do it in the education space. So I don't doubt that you do it in your, interpersonal spaces as well. But I think it's important to I mean, I guess that goes back to discernment, but I think it's important to not so much focus on seeing the good or seeing the worst, but just understanding that, like, sometimes what you see is what you get. And you're not a person that's quick to jump to conclusions. So
Right.
it all depends on the interaction. But at the end of the day, 9 times out of 10, the way you first, like, truly, not somebody else's, like, impression of them, but your first interaction, like somebody else's impression may impact how you go into an interaction with somebody for the first time. But what you see with your own eyes is typically probably the baseline of what that person is, wherever they fall on that scale, which is hilarious because this is working out perfectly. So I saw a tweet that focused on, did I save it? I hope I did. Because it's in line with like kind of taking people at face value. But the tweet said, having a relatively pleasant interaction with a C tier friend or acquaintance who sort of annoys you in a hard to articulate way will have you thinking, maybe perhaps I've been too hard on, bro. And I thought about that in regards of like, we talked about like friends and like the spectrum of that friendship and even grieving friendships. But I don't know if we really defined like how there are tiers of friendships. And I think kind of somewhat to your point of being able to read people like, or not even read people, but just take people at face value. I think that often determines, of course, sometimes over time, but that can determine the potential of what tier that person can land in.
I do agree with that. And in terms of tiers, I think that there should be a hierarchy of friendship. A lot of people will argue and say like, "Oh no, we're friends. No one friend is better than the other." Or, I'm not saying that they are. I'm not ranking them to say this is least important to most important. But there is a natural connection and proximity that you have with certain friendships that are closer and some are just as distant. It's not any love lost. You can pick up right where you left off. If I haven't talked to you in 3 months, 3 days, 3 months, or 3 years, right? I can still have that level of connectedness with said friend. But those might be three different people. So I look at it as like, well, my therapist was telling me who are your true friends? Because I had talked about like best friends and stuff like that. She was like, no, who are your true friends? It was important to me to identify a core group. Everybody else, I didn't lose any love or respect for. It was just we have different relationships. And I think that gets to the point of the access that we was talking about earlier, that you're gonna have a different relationship, even in a close group of mutual friends. So therefore, each of those people have different access, to you. That access doesn't always have to be a negative thing. It could just be, by situation.
Yeah, no, that's real. And I definitely agree with the equal friends thing because that is a I think that is a tough reality for a lot of people to accept them. I don't know, maybe not. I think over time, as people get older, I think reality makes people accept it because you just get to places where you have to set boundaries or friendships just change on their own. So it's not so much this idea that that's supposed to be something from jump, but how many people genuinely is it 50-50 with? And again, that's not good or bad, right or wrong. It's not to say that there aren't people that got your back, but really think about like, no, like I give this much and they give this much. However you want to define that, whatever measurement you want to use, like that that should be hard to come by because again, there's no way you have enough for that to be the case with umpteen people. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? Like it just not how it works. At least not how to me. That's not how it works. That's not sustainable, I should say.
hmm And I don't know if this is a super tangent, but I saw a percentage. I was scrolling. I want to say it said 81%, but don't quote me on this. It was some study that said like 81% of people who, said that they were best friends with somebody no longer are. And I'm thinking like that's a massive percentage. It was definitely over 50. I don't remember the exact number though. So we talked about access, granted. But even in your village, and if we're talking about this hierarchy or this, I hate to call it a hierarchy, but this hierarchy of friendship, maybe there needs to be some access denied, right? So how do you navigate this idea of like demoting best friends or, divorcing from that title? Because I still don't, if I called you my best friend, like I don't see how we fall out. We may not call each other best friend anymore, but there shouldn't be a reason why I would say I would never call Qualls my best friend again. Like, and then walk off. So I don't understand that concept. It happens around me a lot, but I'm curious to know what is under that bucket hat of yours in your brain.
No, I the number is high. It's not really surprising though. There are way more friendships that are more fickle than I think people realize. And I think it's because people change how they want their friendships to be, and they don't necessarily have a system of these are the friends I go on vacation with, but these aren't, best friends. Like, granted, your best friend or people that fall into that category, you might be able to do multiple things with because they're
Mhm.
your best friend, right? But once you get out of that realm, everybody else pretty much typically falls into you know, a category. That whole idea of demoting, that whole idea of also maintenance. Like, who cares to maintain the relationship? Because if this is a best friend or if this is somebody in your village or somebody you care about, y'all may not always see eye to eye. Things may not always be green. So, are you willing to come to the table and say, "Hey, yo, my guy, like my brother, like friend, who whatever it is, let's talk this through. Let's get clarity on what issue we have, and so we can move forward and continue to grow in this friendship." Or is the first sign of disagreement or the first sign of like you did something I don't like or whatever the case may be, is that where the buck stops? Is that where it ends? For some people, that's how they move, that's how they operate. I don't know if that's right or wrong. That ain't for me to say, but I think that happens a lot as well.
It's for me to say it's wrong because you just hit the nail on the head. You just solved the world's problems here today by you saying it's about the maintenance. Because a mansion can be beautiful, right? You don't keep up with it. Pipes is gone, the pool looks nasty, trees and grass growing all over the place. It looks haunted, and it's kind of all those things. So yeah, the maintenance is important. And I think people, especially if you've been best friends with somebody for a long time, I don't think people think about the long-term maintenance because maybe you get caught in a snapshot of like when it was good and you didn't have to do anything and it was just natural and organic. Like it doesn't mean that that can't continue, but there still has to be a certain level of like mutual effort on all party sides involved. So you got me right there. I don't think I've paid attention to the maintenance of friendships. But maybe to that point, that's why I understand like true friend, best friend, good friend, friend,
Plain.
acquaintance. I think that's the level that I go through in my head, and I'm fine to put that chart together because I feel like I give the same amount of love to all of those levels. I don't give the same amount of effort though,
And that's okay.
and that's okay. And
Yeah.
that's okay. The love is the same. The effort is different. And that's why we have these categories. I got friends that I talk to maybe twice a year, and it's still all good, all love. But that's not my everyday friend.
Right. And I mean, I think access goes hand in hand with effort, right? Like, not so much dependent on one another, but like I said, love is the same, but the love don't mean like we both made the love may be there, but we both just not making it a point to talk to each other once a month. You know what I'm saying? Like, or unless something major happens, and that's cool. Same thing goes for that access. Like, some people you may not find something out until it's posted, on the internet, or you're gonna have to hear it through the grapevine. You may not hear it, from me. You know what I'm saying? And that don't mean that I intentionally didn't tell you. Like, for some people, that may be the case. But like, it all depends on the tiers. But no, I agreed with all that. I mean, yeah, everything from the maintenance to the chart, everything. I feel like that really summarizes like everything that we've talked about and how it all plays a role in just maintaining friendships for real. And I think that just becomes more key and essential, or at least I feel like what I've learned is the maintenance becomes more key and essential as you get older, not so much just because the work is involved and you should do it, but
Yeah.
also because that's how you decide who goes where, and that's how you sustain yourself. And don't deplete yourself by understanding where you place people, how much effort you putting into maintaining it, and how much access you giving those people that are around you. So
Well, y'all heard it here, folks. His shirt says it all. Legends. He got it.
we just cured world friendships.
Not world friendships. Yep, you exclusive coming from podcast Cam Newton. You got it.
Hey, yo, I was waiting on you to throw one in there because I was gonna ask what my Keith Lee variant was for this episode.
There you go.
The
It's
Cam
podcast
Newton.
podcast Cam Newton.
This is this is giving a Cam Newton vibe. I match though. I
I
match.
mean, yeah, it
Cam
all.
don't be matching. Cam don't be matching.
Even if you took a like a steal of you right now, you could put that as cover art on Apple Music, and I'm pretty sure I would listen to the album. It gives me like mm, internet vibes, kind of black eclectic. I would. I'm
That's a
sure you have a playlist for that, and you just need to put your picture up there, and I'm gonna listen to it. I'm gonna share it and be like, "Yo, this my cool friend. He like to you." And I say this with love. You address like you make music that Evan would listen to. I say that as a compliment to both of y'all.
I love that there's only a certain community of people that's gonna understand how funny that is. But I'm weak. You've been on a roll today. Touche.
Happy New
Yeah,
Year.
brother. Touche. Touche. But we are gonna get out of y'all hair. Keep enjoying the new year. Uh hope that everybody is getting started on those resolutions or just getting started on whatever y'all want to get better at. And yeah, come back next week to check in with us again. But until then, until next time, we'll catch y'all on the next episode. Peace.
Peace.